Good evening. Tonight, we walk together toward a discovery you already carry within. Zen Buddhism teaches us that self-acceptance is not something we achieve, it is something we uncover. Before we begin, if your heart wishes, share with us which country you are listening from and what time it is there. From which corner of the world do you breathe with us tonight? This is a space for gentle cultivation, a refuge where you need not perform or prove anything. You are welcome to simply rest, to listen, and to allow these words to guide you inward toward kindness. Everything you seek is already present within you. We are only here to remember what has always lived in your heart. If these words touch something true, return whenever you need this quiet meeting. Subscribe to keep this sanctuary of peace close by. Now take a deep breath and be fully present. A slightly crooked path. Honoring your unique way. Ren was a young practitioner at a mountain monastery, earnest and devoted to his practice. Every morning, the other monks would take the direct stone path to the meditation hall, their footsteps efficient and synchronized. But Ren always found himself choosing the longer route, winding through uneven terrain, covered with moss and fallen pine needles. He felt a deep shame about this tendency, wondering why he could not simply follow the others. Why did he always complicate what could be so simple and straightforward? Each morning brought the same internal reproach, the same quiet disappointment in himself for being different. One morning, Mestre Jun, the elder teacher known for his silent wisdom, walked beside Ren without announcing his presence or offering explanation. They moved together along the crooked trail, stepping carefully over gnarled roots and pausing where the path curved unexpectedly around ancient stones. Ren's heart tightened with embarrassment at being observed in what he considered his weakness. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I do not know why I take this difficult route, Mestre. I should be more disciplined, more like the others." Jun said nothing at first, only gestured with a weathered hand toward a cluster of delicate wildflowers growing in a narrow crevice between two moss-covered rocks. "Have you seen these before?" Jun asked quietly, his eyes gentle and without judgment. Ren looked closely at the small purple blossoms, their petals catching the early light in a way that made them seem to glow from within. He realized he had not noticed them before, though he walked this path nearly every day. "They only grow here," Jun continued, his voice soft as the morning breeze. "The straight path would never show you this beauty. No one who rushes along the stone corridor knows these flowers exist." Ren stood very still, something shifting in his chest as he absorbed the simple truth of the Mestre's observation. Ren looked around with new eyes, suddenly aware of everything his crooked path had revealed to him over the months. He had met birds that nested in the low, twisted branches, species he could identify by song now. He had learned the way morning light filtered differently through the gnarled pines, creating patterns of gold and shadow that changed with the seasons. He knew the smell of wet earth after rain in places the stone path never touched, rich and alive. His way of moving through the world had taught him things the others would never learn, not because they were less capable, but because they walked a different path. The Mestre smiled gently, his face creased with decades of compassionate understanding. "Your path is not wrong because it differs from others," he said. "It is yours because you walk it fully, with presence and attention. That is what makes it sacred." Ren felt something soften deep in his chest, a knot of shame he had carried for years beginning to loosen and unravel. He had been judging himself by someone else's measure, abandoning his own nature in pursuit of an imagined ideal. He had been rejecting the very thing that made his practice unique and alive. In Zen practice, we learn that there is no single correct way to move through life or toward awakening. The teaching of anatta, or no self, reminds us that we are not fixed into one unchangeable mold. We are fluid, unique expressions of the Dharma, each walking our own version of the path. Comparison is a thief of peace, stealing our ability to appreciate the journey we are actually on. When we accept our own rhythm, our own pace, our own choices, we stop wasting precious energy wishing we were someone else. We stop abandoning ourselves in favor of a fantasy. Ren learned that self-acceptance begins when we honor the path we are already walking, whether it appears crooked or straight to outside observers. He learned that his tendency toward the winding route was not a character flaw, but a doorway to presence, to noticing, to relationship with the living world. The Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. This includes the way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you arrive at each moment. There is no need to straighten what is naturally winding, no need to force yourself into someone else's shape. Ren bowed to his teacher with gratitude, and then, for the first time in his life, he also bowed to himself. He honored his own way of being, his own pace, his own discoveries. He stopped apologizing for who he was and began to meet himself with the same compassion he would offer a dear friend. This small shift changed everything. His practice deepened not because he became more disciplined in the conventional sense, but because he stopped fighting himself. He stopped dividing his energy between walking and wishing he walked differently. Let us carry this teaching with us as we rest tonight. Your way of being is not a flaw to fix or a problem to solve. It is a signature written by life itself, by your unique history and temperament, and the mysterious unfolding of your particular existence. What you have judged as wrong in yourself may be exactly what allows you to see beauty others miss, to offer gifts others cannot give. Self-acceptance is not about becoming better. It is about ceasing the war against who you already are. As we move forward, let us begin to soften our grip on who we think we should be and meet with kindness who we actually are. The Tea Master's second choice. The beauty of simplicity. In a small village by the river, where willow trees bent low over the water and mist rose each morning like breath, two sisters prepared tea for travelers and guests. The elder sister, Aiko, was known throughout the region for her elaborate and precise ceremonies. Every movement was choreographed down to the angle of her wrist, every utensil polished until it reflected light like a mirror. Her tea service was a performance, admired and applauded by merchants and nobles alike. People traveled from distant towns just to witness her artistry, to see how she transformed a simple cup of tea into something extraordinary. The younger sister, Mara, prepared tea quietly in the back room of the same house, away from the audiences and the acclaim. Her movements were simple and unhurried, guided more by intuition than by studied technique. She had no special utensils, no choreography, no reputation. She often felt invisible, a shadow beside her sister's dazzling brightness. Visitors rarely asked for her, and when they did, it was usually because Aiko was occupied with more important guests. Mara had learned to accept this role, or so she told herself. Though a quiet sadness lived in her heart, she believed her simplicity was evidence of inadequacy, proof that she lacked her sister's gifts. One autumn afternoon, when the air smelled of wood smoke and ripening persimmons, a wandering mestre arrived at the tea house. He was dressed plainly, his robe faded from sun and rain, his face weathered but kind. Aiko immediately recognized the opportunity and began her most intricate ceremony, whisking matcha with flawless precision, arranging delicate sweets on lacquered trays in patterns that mimicked falling leaves. She moved like a dancer, each gesture intentional and beautiful. The maestro watched politely, his expression unreadable, and when the tea was placed before him, He bowed in thanks. He lifted the cup and took a single sip, then gently set it down without finishing. Aiko's smile faltered slightly, confused by his restraint. The mestre looked at her with kind eyes and asked, "Is there another who serves tea here?" Aiko hesitated, surprised and a little wounded, then called for her sister. Mara emerged from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron, her heart pounding with nervousness. She had no preparation, no ceremony planned. She could only offer what she knew, the simple way she had always made tea when no one important was watching. Mara heated water over a small flame, listening to the sound change as the temperature rose, a practice her grandmother had taught her. She measured tea leaves by feel, trusting her hands more than any rule. She poured with full attention, her breath steady, her mind empty of performance or worry about judgment. When she handed the cup to the mestre, she did so with both hands, meeting his eyes briefly, offering not just tea, but presence. There was no ego in the gesture, no attempt to impress or to be anything other than exactly what she was in that moment. The mestre drank slowly, savoring each sip, and then closed his eyes as if listening to something only he could hear. When he opened them, he smiled with genuine warmth. "This," he said quietly, "is the tea I needed." Mara was confused and glanced at her sister, whose face was unreadable. "But mestre," Mara said softly, "my sister's tea is far superior to mine. She has studied for years. I have only ever done it this simple way." The mestre shook his head gently, setting the empty cup down with great care, as if it were precious. "Your sister's tea was beautiful to watch, and I honor her skill and dedication," he said. "But I tasted her striving with every sip, her need to be seen as excellent. In your tea, I tasted only presence, only the sincerity of the moment. You were not performing or trying to prove anything. You were simply offering what you had with an open heart. There is no self-consciousness in your gesture, no separation between the one who serves and the act of serving, and that is profoundly rare." Mara felt tears rise, hot and unexpected. She had spent years believing her simplicity was a kind of failure, evidence that she was less than her sister. The mestre continued, his voice soft but firm. "When you accept yourself as you are, you stop trying to be seen or validated by others, and paradoxically, that is when you become truly visible, truly present. Your lack of technique is not poverty, it is freedom." This teaching struck Mara like a bell, resonating in places she had not known were waiting to be touched. She realized she had been abandoning herself, wishing she were Aiko, never honoring the particular gifts of her own hands and heart. Self-acceptance, she understood, was not about becoming more impressive. It was about offering herself without apology, exactly as she was. This story reflects a deep truth in Zen Buddhism. Suzuki Roshi taught, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." Mara's lack of performance was not a lack of skill or dedication. It was freedom from the prison of needing to impress, freedom from the exhausting work of measuring herself against others. Self-acceptance allows us to stop the endless comparison and simply offer what we have. Authenticity, not perfection, is what touches hearts and creates real connection. The compulsion to prove ourselves often blocks the very intimacy and peace we seek. Mara learned that her value did not depend on being like her sister or like anyone else. She learned that her quiet, unadorned way of being was not only enough, it was exactly what some souls needed. In accepting herself, she stopped shrinking and apologizing. She stopped waiting for external permission to matter or to take up space in the world. As we rest here tonight, let us ask ourselves with gentle honesty, where am I performing instead of being present? Where am I abandoning my own simplicity, my own authentic offering, in favor of someone else's brightness or approval? Let us breathe into the beauty of what we already are, without addition or improvement. Lanterns in the back alley, small light, great purpose. Iori was a young scribe at a large monastery nestled in the mountains, where the sound of chanting echoed off stone walls and incense smoke curled through cool air. He was skilled in calligraphy and the copying of sacred texts, his brushwork careful and precise. But he was quiet by nature, shy and introspective, often overlooked among the more charismatic monks who gave public teachings and led ceremonies. He envied those who seemed to radiate natural confidence, whose voices filled the meditation hall with authority. He felt he contributed little of real importance, that his presence barely registered in the life of the community. One evening, as the sun dipped below the ridgeline and the first stars appeared, the head monk called Iori to his quarters. He assigned the young scribe a task. Each night, just after dusk, Iori was to walk the narrow alley behind the temple and light a row of paper lanterns that hung along the back wall. The task seemed menial, almost insulting to someone of his education and skill. He had hoped for more responsibility, for work that mattered. But he accepted the assignment in silence, bowing respectfully, even as disappointment settled heavy in his chest. Night after night, Iori walked the alley alone, lighting each lantern with a small flame he carried in a clay lamp. The alley was tucked away from the main paths, shadowed by tall pines and rarely used by anyone. He saw no one, heard no thanks, received no acknowledgement for the task. The work felt invisible, a waste of his time and abilities. He began to resent the assignment, feeling forgotten by the community, as if he had been pushed aside into irrelevance. Why am I here? He wondered bitterly as he lit the lanterns each night. What difference does this small, unseen act possibly make in the world? One cold night, when frost was beginning to silver the edges of leaves, Iori lit the last lantern and prepared to return inside. Suddenly, he heard footsteps, uneven and stumbling, coming from the forest path that opened onto the alley. A traveler emerged from the darkness, his face pale with exhaustion, his clothes torn and muddy. The man's eyes filled with tears when he saw the lanterns glowing softly in the dark. He fell to his knees and bowed deeply toward Iori, his voice breaking. "Thank you," he whispered. "I have been lost in the forest for hours. I thought I would die out there. Your lights guided me here. They saved my life." Iori stood frozen, unable to speak, his resentment dissolving in an instant. Over the following weeks, he began to notice what he had been too bitter to see before. Late arrivals appeared regularly from the forest path, pilgrims who had walked all day and into the night, families seeking shelter, wanderers who had lost their way. All of them found the temple because of the small lights in the forgotten alley, lights that Iori had dismissed as meaningless. He realized his task was not menial at all. It was a quiet form of mercy, a steady offering of guidance to those most in need. One evening, the head monk joined Iori in the alley, walking beside him as he lit the lanterns one by one. They moved in silence for a while, the only sound the soft creak of the paper lanterns swaying in the breeze. Finally, the monk spoke, his voice gentle. "You thought this task was unimportant, did you not?" Iori nodded, ashamed of his earlier bitterness. The monk smiled. "These lanterns are often the first sign of refuge that weary souls see. You do not need to be seen or celebrated to matter deeply. You only need to show up faithfully and offer your light, however small it seems. In Buddhism, we learn that every role, no matter how humble it appears, upholds the Dharma and supports the community. The Sangha, the spiritual community, depends not only on brilliant teachers and eloquent speakers, but on those who sweep floors, prepare meals, light lanterns, and hold space in ways that go unnoticed. The teaching of karma reminds us that all actions have meaning, that every choice and gesture sends ripples outward into the world in ways we cannot always see or measure. Iori had been measuring his worth by visibility, by recognition and applause. But the Buddha taught that true value does not require an audience. Being your own light, as the Buddha encouraged, means shining even when no one is watching, especially then. It means offering your gifts faithfully, without needing external validation to confirm that you matter. Iori began to light the lanterns with reverence, bowing slightly to each one as he touched flame to wick. He no longer felt small or invisible. He understood that his quiet, steady presence was a form of love, an offering to people he would never meet, whose lives he touched in ways he might never fully know. Self-acceptance grew in him not because he became more visible or important, but because he stopped needing to be. He accepted that his particular way of contributing mattered deeply, even if it was never celebrated publicly or acknowledged with praise. He stopped comparing himself to the charismatic monks and started honoring his own gifts, his own temperament, his own path of service. The lanterns became a meditation, a practice of selfless giving, a reminder that significance is not the same as recognition. His heart grew peaceful, and that peace radiated outward in ways subtle and profound. Others began to notice a calmness in Iori, a groundedness that had not been there before, though they could not name its source. As you rest here tonight, consider this truth with an open heart. You do not need to be the loudest voice or the brightest flame to matter. Your steady presence, your small faithfulness, your quiet acts of care are enough. They have always been enough. The world is held together, not by grand gestures alone, but by countless small lights, by ordinary people showing up day after day with love. Let yourself be one of those lights. Let yourself accept that your contribution, however modest it seems, is woven into the fabric of something much larger. You are enough, exactly as you are, doing exactly what you are doing. Rest in that truth tonight. The letter never sent. Compassion begins at home. Naoko lived in a small hermitage at the edge of a monastery, where she spent her days in solitary practice and study. She was diligent and sincere, but her mind was often her cruelest companion. Each evening, she had a habit that no one else knew about. She would sit at her low wooden desk and write letters to herself. Letters filled with harsh criticism and disappointment. You failed again today. You are too slow, too distracted, too far from enlightenment. Why do you even try? She never sent these letters, of course. She folded them carefully and placed them in a cedar box beneath her sleeping mat, as if containing the poison would somehow neutralize it. Over the years, the box grew heavy with these unsent accusations, a weight she carried literally and figuratively. She never read them again once they were written, but she knew they were there, a silent testimony to her inadequacy. She believed this practice was a form of honesty, a way of holding herself accountable. She did not realize it was a form of violence, a daily abandonment of the very heart she was meant to cultivate. No one saw these letters. No one knew how cruelly she spoke to herself in the privacy of her small room. One afternoon, the old monge Ken came to her hermitage to borrow a text on the precepts. Naoko welcomed him, prepared tea, and went to find the book in her modest collection. In her absence, A gust of wind blew through the open window, scattering papers across the floor. Ken bent to gather them and noticed one of the letters, partially unfolded. He did not mean to read it, but the words were stark and painful, impossible to ignore. His heart ached as he realized what Naoko had been doing to herself all this time. When Naoko returned with the book, she saw the letter in Ken's weathered hands and froze. Shame flooded through her, hot and overwhelming. She wanted to disappear, to explain, to defend herself. But Ken simply looked at her with such compassion that her defenses crumbled. He said nothing about the letter at first, only thanked her for the tea and the book. Then, as he prepared to leave, he paused at the doorway. "May I respond to this letter?" he asked gently. Naoko nodded, unable to speak, unsure what else to do. A few days later, Ken returned with a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Naoko and left without waiting for her reaction. Alone, she opened it with trembling hands. Inside, written in Ken's careful script, were words she had never imagined hearing. "Dear Naoko, you are trying so hard, and I see that effort. You are not failing. You are learning, which is what all of us are doing every single day. Please speak to yourself as you would speak to a dear friend who is struggling. You deserve that kindness. You deserve your own compassion." The tears came before she could stop them, deep and wrenching. Naoko realized with sudden clarity that she would never write such cruel words to another person. She would never send a letter telling a friend they were worthless or hopelessly flawed. Yet she spoke to herself this way constantly, without hesitation or mercy. She had divided herself into judge and accused, and the trial never ended. She saw how exhausting it was, how it drained her energy and joy, how it prevented the very growth she claimed to seek. Self-hatred, she understood, is not humility. It is not honesty. It is a barrier to awakening, a refusal to accept the truth of her inherent worth. In Buddhism, the practice of metta, or loving kindness, is often taught as something we extend outward to others. But the Buddha was clear: loving kindness must begin with oneself. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that we cannot offer true compassion to others if we are at war with ourselves. If our inner dialogue is cruel, that cruelty leaks into everything we do. Metta practice starts with the simple, radical act of wishing ourselves well, of speaking to ourselves as we would to someone we cherish. Naoko began a new practice. Each evening, instead of writing letters of condemnation, she wrote letters of encouragement, the kind she would write to a friend walking the same difficult path. "Dear Naoko, you sat in meditation today, even though your mind was restless. That takes courage. You are doing your best, and your best is enough." At first, the words felt awkward and false, like speaking a foreign language. But over time, something shifted. The kindness she offered herself on paper began to seep into her thoughts, her inner voice softening from a shout to a whisper, from a whip to a hand on her shoulder. She took the old box of cruel letters and, with Ken's blessing, burned them in a small ritual fire. She watched the paper curl and blacken, the words dissolving into smoke and ash. She was not erasing her past or pretending she had never struggled. She was releasing the need to punish herself endlessly for being human. She was choosing, deliberately and with great tenderness, to be on her own side. Ken watched the fire with her and said quietly, "This is not self-indulgence. This is wisdom. You cannot walk the path if you are carrying a weapon aimed at your own heart. As we rest here tonight, let us ask ourselves with honesty and care, how do I speak to myself when no one else is listening? Would I speak that way to a friend, to a child? to anyone I loved? If the answer is no, then let us begin the practice of metta toward ourselves. Let us lay down the harsh words, the endless criticism, the belief that cruelty will somehow make us better. It will not. Only love transforms. Only compassion opens the door to real change. Speak to yourself tonight as someone worthy of kindness, because you are. You have always been worthy. Let that truth settle into your bones as you breathe and rest. Footprints after rain. Honoring your unique form. Sora was a young noviца at a monastery in the hills, where the paths were often muddy and the sound of rain on tile roofs was a constant companion. She was devoted to her practice, but she carried a private shame that had followed her since childhood. She hated the shape of her feet. They were wide and flat, the toes slightly crooked, nothing like the delicate feet she saw in paintings or admired on other women. She walked carefully, always trying to hide them, wearing socks even in summer, avoiding situations where others might see. One spring morning, after a night of heavy rain, Sora walked the garden path to fetch water from the well. The ground was soft and slick with mud, and her footprints marked the earth clearly behind her. She glanced back and felt the familiar wave of disgust. Even her footprints looked wrong to her, too wide, too heavy. She wished she could walk without leaving a trace, without evidence of her presence. She wished, not for the first time, that she could be different, that she could inhabit a body that did not embarrass her. May, an older monja known for her quiet wisdom and gentle humor, happened to be sitting on a bench nearby, mending a robe. She noticed Sora's expression, the way the young woman looked back at her footprints with something like shame. May set down her sewing and stood, walking over to where Sora stood frozen. "Come," May said simply, and gestured for Sora to follow her along the path. They walked together in silence, their feet pressing into the soft earth, leaving two trails of prints side by side. May stopped and pointed to the footprints stretching behind them. "Look," she said, "each trail is different. Mine are narrow and high-arched. Yours are wide and grounded. Neither is wrong. They are simply the shape of the feet that made them." Sora felt her throat tighten, unsure what to say. May continued, her voice soft but firm. "Why would you wish to walk with my feet or anyone else's? These are the feet that carry you. They are strong and steady. They have brought you this far. Have they not served you well?" Sora had never thought of it that way. She had only ever seen her feet as a flaw, something to hide or fix. But May was right. Her feet had carried her up mountains, through long hours of walking meditation, across rivers and forests. They had never failed her. They were reliable, sturdy, capable. The shame she felt was not about function. It was about appearance, about an imagined standard she had absorbed without questioning. She realized she had been rejecting a part of herself that deserved gratitude, not contempt. May smiled and crouched down, pressing her hand gently into the mud beside Sora's footprint. She lifted her hand, leaving a clear imprint. "We all leave different marks," she said. "The world needs all kinds of footprints, not just one kind. Imagine if every path looked the same, every track identical. How boring, how lifeless. Your footprint is yours alone. It tells the story of how you move through the world, and that story is valuable." Sora felt something crack open inside her, a hard shell of judgment beginning to soften. In Zen Buddhism, the teaching of anatta, or no self, points to the truth that there is no fixed, unchanging essence we must defend or perfect. We are fluid, interconnected, constantly becoming. Attachment to an idealized image of how we should look, how our bodies should be, is a source of suffering. The Buddha taught that clinging to any fixed idea including ideas about our own form, leads to dukkha, dissatisfaction. When we accept the body we have, we free ourselves from the exhausting work of comparison and rejection. Sora began to practice gratitude for her feet, a small daily exercise that felt awkward at first. Each morning, she would bow and thank them for carrying her. She stopped hiding them and started noticing how they grounded her during meditation, how their width gave her stability. She watched other practitioners stumble on uneven ground while her feet held her steady. Slowly, the shame dissolved, replaced by a quiet appreciation. She realized that self-acceptance is not about loving every part of yourself all the time. It is about ceasing the war, about offering respect and kindness to the body that houses you. May taught her that the body is a temporary home, a vehicle for this particular life, and it deserves honor, not cruelty. The body is not the enemy, it is the companion. When Sora stopped demanding that her body be different, she found peace. She stopped waiting for some future version of herself to be acceptable. She accepted herself now, as she was, feet and all. This acceptance did not make her complacent. It made her free. She had more energy for practice, for compassion, for living fully, because she was no longer spending it on self-hatred. As you rest tonight, bring gentle awareness to your own body. What parts have you been rejecting, hiding, wishing were different? What would it feel like to offer those parts gratitude instead of shame? Your body, in whatever form it takes, has carried you through every moment of your life. It has survived, adapted, endured. It is worthy of respect. Let us practice, even just for tonight, the radical act of acceptance. Let us meet our bodies with kindness, honoring the unique shape of the footprints we leave behind. The room with one window. Limitation as teacher. Elias was a carpenter who had worked all his life with wood and stone, building homes and temples throughout the valley. Years ago, when he was still learning his trade, he had been commissioned to build a small meditation room for a modest hermitage. He worked carefully, but when the structure was nearly finished, he realized he had made an error. He had built the room with only one window, when the plan called for two. He was young and ashamed, but the head monk accepted the room anyway, saying it would serve its purpose. Over the years, Elias carried guilt about that mistake. He believed he had given the hermitage something inferior, a flawed space that diminished the practice of those who used it. He avoided visiting the hermitage, embarrassed by the reminder of his inadequacy. Every time he thought of the room, he felt the sting of failure. He told himself he should have been more careful, more skilled, more attentive. The single window became a symbol in his mind of everything he lacked, everything he could never repair. One autumn, decades later, Elias returned to the valley to repair a bridge near the hermitage. Curiosity and old shame finally drove him to visit the meditation room he had built so long ago. He approached quietly, half hoping no one would be there. But when he opened the door, he found a monk sitting in meditation, the late afternoon light pouring through the single window in a shaft of gold. The light illuminated the monk's face and hands, creating a sense of focus and intimacy that took Elias's breath away. The room felt not diminished, but sacred. The monk opened his eyes and smiled at Elias, recognizing him from years past. Elias apologized, his voice rough with emotion. "I built this room wrong," he said. "I gave you only one window when you deserved two." The monk looked puzzled, then laughed gently, a sound like water over stones. "Wrong?" he asked. "This room has been a gift to every person who has practiced here. The single window teaches us where to direct our attention. It eliminates distraction. The light that enters is enough, more than enough. Elias sat down heavily, overwhelmed. He had spent decades carrying shame for something that had, in fact, become a source of grace. The monk continued, "In meditation, we learn that less is often more. Simplicity creates space for depth. Your one window was not a mistake. It was an invitation to presence, to stillness. Many who sit here say this room helps them concentrate in a way other spaces do not. You gave us exactly what we needed, even if you did not intend it." Elias felt tears on his face, a lifetime of self-judgment beginning to dissolve. This teaching reflects a core insight of Zen practice. Alan Watts taught that the obstacle is the path, that what we perceive as limitation or failure is often the very thing that shapes our growth. In Japanese aesthetics, there is a concept called wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and incompleteness. A cracked bowl, a weathered stone, a room with one window, these are not lesser because they are imperfect. They are richer, more interesting, more real. Our flaws and limitations are not separate from our value. They are woven into it. Elias had been measuring his work, and by extension himself, against an ideal of perfection that existed only in his mind. He had not considered that his limitation might become a teacher, that what he saw as inadequacy might serve a purpose he never imagined. Self-acceptance often requires this shift in perspective, the willingness to see our mistakes and limitations not as evidence of worthlessness, but as part of the texture of a meaningful life. We are not diminished by imperfection. We are made human by it. The monk invited Elias to sit and meditate in the room he had built. Elias sat beneath the single window, feeling the light on his skin, and for the first time in decades, he forgave himself. He saw that his younger self had done his best with the skill and awareness he had at the time. That was all anyone could do. He saw that life had taken his mistake and made it useful, made it beautiful. He did not need to carry the weight of that old shame anymore. It had served no one, least of all himself. As Elias left the hermitage that day, he felt lighter than he had in years. He understood that much of his suffering had come not from the mistake itself, but from his refusal to let it go, his insistence on punishing himself long after the moment had passed. Forgiveness, he realized, is a gift we give ourselves. It does not erase the past, but it frees us from being imprisoned by it. He walked home slowly, noticing the late light through the trees, grateful for the room with one window and all it had taught him. Tonight, as you rest, consider what old mistakes you are still carrying, what limitations you still judge as failures. What if those very things have served a purpose you cannot yet see? What if the flaw you regret is exactly what makes your offering unique and valuable? Let yourself imagine, just for a moment, that you are enough as you are, limitations and all. Let yourself rest in the possibility that nothing about you needs to be fixed in order for you to be worthy of love and peace. Breathe into that possibility and allow it to soften the edges of old shame. A bowl that refused to shine. The gift of being ordinary. Hana was a ceramic artist who lived in a village known for its pottery, where clay was pulled from the riverbanks and shaped into vessels of great beauty. Her neighbors produced glazed bowls that shone like jewels, catching light and drawing admiration at every market. But no matter what Hana tried, her bowls came out different. The glaze never took the way it should. Her pieces emerged from the kiln with a matte, almost dull finish, opaque and unremarkable. She felt she lacked some essential skill, some secret knowledge the other potters possessed. Market day was always difficult for Hana. She set up her table with quiet resignation, arranging her plain bowls among the shining works of her more talented neighbors. Customers would pause, glance at her offerings, and move on quickly. drawn to the brighter, more eye-catching pieces nearby. She tried not to feel hurt, tried to remind herself that worth was not measured by sales. But doubt crept in nonetheless. Maybe she was fooling herself. Maybe she should give up pottery and find something she was actually good at. The weight of comparison was exhausting. One evening, as Hannah was packing up her unsold bowls, a traveler approached her table. He looked exhausted, his face lined with the kind of weariness that comes from long roads and little rest. He picked up one of Hannah's plain bowls, turning it slowly in his hands. His eyes softened. "This one," he said quietly. "How much?" Hannah named a modest price, surprised he had chosen her work over the gleaming pieces still displayed nearby. The traveler paid and sat down right there at the edge of the market, filling the bowl with simple rice from a vendor. Hannah watched as the man ate slowly, his shoulders gradually relaxing, his breathing deepening. When he finished, he returned to her table and bowed. "Thank you," he said. "I have been on the road for weeks, my eyes tired from too much brightness, too much noise. Your bowl was the first thing today that did not demand anything from me. It let me rest. The glaze is soft, gentle. It does not shout. It simply holds. That is exactly what I needed." Hannah stood speechless, something shifting inside her chest. She had spent years seeing her bowls as failures because they did not shine like the others. She had never considered that their quietness might be their strength, that their refusal to dazzle might be a kind of mercy. The traveler's words opened a door in her understanding. Not everyone needs brightness. Some souls need softness, need simplicity, need something that does not compete for attention, but simply offers itself without pretense. Her bowls were not inferior. They were different, and that difference served a purpose she had been too close to see. In Buddhism, we are taught the value of contentment, of being enough without striving for more. The teaching of santuti, or sufficiency, reminds us that happiness does not come from being the best, the brightest, the most admired. It comes from accepting what is, from offering what we have without comparison. Hannah's bowls were not lacking. They were complete in their own nature. The problem was not the bowls. It was her belief that they needed to be something other than what they were in order to have value. Hannah began to see her work with new eyes. She stopped trying to make her glaze shine and started honoring its natural softness. She noticed that her bowls felt good in the hands, that their weight was balanced, that they held heat gently. She realized that people who bought her work often returned, not for flash or status, but for the quiet comfort her pieces offered. Her bowls became companions in daily life, unassuming and reliable. They did not demand to be displayed. They asked only to be used, to be part of the ordinary rhythms of eating and drinking and living. Self-acceptance, Hannah learned, is not about convincing yourself that you are the best. It is about releasing the need to be. It is about offering what you have, as you are, and trusting that it is enough for those who need it. Not everyone will choose your work, your way, your particular gifts, and that is as it should be. The world needs diversity, needs the shining and the matte, the loud and the quiet, the extraordinary and the ordinary. When we stop competing and start simply being, we find our place. Hannah's business did not explode with success. She did not become famous, but she found peace. She stopped measuring herself against her neighbors and started honoring her own hands, her own vision, her own contribution. She accepted that her path was not theirs, and that was not a problem to fix. It was simply the truth. She learned to say, "This is my work, and it is enough." That small shift changed everything. She worked with joy instead of shame, with presence instead of striving. As you rest tonight, ask yourself, where am I trying to shine? when my nature is to offer quiet presence? Where am I judging myself as less than because I do not match someone else's way of being? What if your ordinariness, your softness, your refusal to dazzle is exactly the gift some souls are searching for? Let yourself be the bowl that does not shine. Let yourself be enough, exactly as you are, without needing to be more impressive or more anything. Rest in the radical truth that you are already complete. The cat that stayed. Belonging is an inside decision. Noob was a scruffy street cat, grey and white with one torn ear and a limp in his back leg from some long ago injury. He had wandered the village for years, sleeping in alleys and scavenging scraps, belonging to no one. One cold autumn, he found his way to the monastery at the edge of town and decided, with the mysterious certainty that cats possess, that this was where he would stay. He curled up in the corner of the meditation hall, his body small and unobtrusive, his eyes half closed in something that looked like peace. Some of the monks welcomed Noob, leaving out bits of food and scratching behind his tattered ear. But others disapproved. A monastery is not a home for strays, they said. He does not belong here. This is a place for serious practice, not for animals wandering in from the street. Several times, Noob was gently but firmly carried outside, and the door closed behind him. But each time, within hours, he would reappear, slipping through some gap or waiting patiently until someone opened the gate. He always returned to the same corner, as if he had decided the matter and no external rejection could change his mind. Leo, a young novicio, watched this pattern repeat over and over. He felt a painful kinship with the cat. Leo had grown up poor, the son of laborers, and had arrived at the monastery with nothing but a borrowed robe and a heart full of doubt. He often felt like an outsider, less educated than the others, less refined, less certain of his place. He was always waiting for someone to tell him he did not truly belong, that he had wandered into a world not meant for him. Watching Noob be expelled again and again mirrored his own internal fear of being cast out, of being told he was a mistake. One evening, Leo found the headmistress sitting in the garden, observing Noob as the cat groomed himself calmly near the koi pond. Leo approached hesitantly. "Mestre," he asked, "should we let the cat stay, or should we keep removing him?" The mestre smiled, his eyes crinkling with quiet amusement. "What do you think, Leo?" Leo struggled to answer. Part of him wanted Noob to stay because it would mean he too might be allowed to remain despite feeling unworthy. But he was afraid to say so, afraid his feelings were inappropriate for a monk. The mestre spoke gently, as if reading Leo's heart. "Noob has decided he belongs here. No one gave him permission. No one invited him. He simply chose. And because his choice is internal, rooted in some deep knowing, our external rejections do not change it. He returns because he knows, in whatever way a cat knows, that this is his place." The mestre paused, watching Leo carefully. "Belonging is not something granted by others, Leo. It is something you claim for yourself. If you wait for the world to tell you that you deserve to be here, you will wait forever. You must decide." Leo felt his throat tighten, the truth of the words hitting something raw and undefended. He had been waiting for permission, for validation, for someone to assure him he was good enough. But the mestre was saying that belonging was not a gift bestowed by external authority. It was an internal decision, a claim you made on your own behalf. Noob did not ask if he was worthy, he simply was. He inhabited his place with the quiet confidence of someone who had stopped questioning his right to exist in the space he occupied. In Zen Buddhism, the teaching of Buddha nature or Busho, tells us that every being possesses inherent worth and the seed of awakening. This nature is not earned or granted, it simply is. We do not become worthy through achievement or approval. We are worthy because we exist. The belief that we must prove ourselves, that we must wait for permission to take up space, is a form of delusion. It separates us from the truth of our inherent completeness. Noob embodied this teaching without words, without philosophy, simply by being and staying. The Mestra stood and walked toward the meditation hall, gesturing for Leo to follow. When they reached the door, the Mestra opened it wide and nodded toward Noob's corner. "From now on," he said, "this is Noob's place. Let no one remove him. He belongs here because he has chosen to belong, and that is reason enough." Then he turned to Leo, his gaze direct and compassionate. "And you, Leo, belong here for the same reason. Not because you are perfect or polished or free from doubt, but because you have chosen this path, and that choice is sacred. Stop waiting for someone to tell you that you are allowed to be here. You are here. That is all the permission you need." Leo bowed deeply, tears slipping down his face. He had spent so long feeling like an imposter, like someone who had sneaked into a place meant for better people. But the Mestra's words, and Noob's stubborn persistence, taught him that belonging is not about being chosen. It is about choosing yourself, about deciding that you have a right to be where you are, to take up space, to exist without apology. Self-acceptance, he realized, begins with the radical act of claiming your own presence as valid and worthy, regardless of external validation. From that day forward, Leo practiced what Noob had taught him. When doubt arose, when he felt less than or out of place, he reminded himself, "I belong here because I am here. I do not need anyone's permission to exist fully in this moment, in this life." The cat curled in his corner became a living koan, a wordless teaching about the power of inner knowing over external approval. And Leo, like Noob, stopped waiting to be invited into his own life. He simply lived it, fully and without apology, claiming his belonging as his birthright. Tonight, as you rest, know this: you belong here, in this moment, in this body, in this life. Not because you have earned it, but because you exist. Let that be enough. Winter notes on the wall. Receiving your own kindness. Yara worked as a cleaner at a large monastery, responsible for sweeping the corridors, washing the floors, and keeping the practice spaces tidy. Her work was invisible in the way that essential work often is, noticed only when undone. She moved quietly through the halls before dawn and after dusk, her presence barely registered by the monks and nuns who passed her with distracted nods. She did not mind. She found a kind of meditation in the repetition, in the simple acts of care that kept the space welcoming for others. One winter, during the coldest months when snow piled high against the walls and the monastery felt like an island in a frozen sea, Yara began a private practice. As she cleaned the inner hallways, the corridors that only residents used, she started writing small notes on the walls with a piece of chalk. The notes were simple, gentle reminders written in her careful script. You are doing your best. It is enough. Rest when you need to. You are not alone. She wrote them in corners and alcoves, places where someone pausing in fatigue or doubt might notice them. Yara told no one about the notes. She did not write them for recognition or praise. She wrote them because the monastery felt heavy in winter, because she noticed the strain on faces, the slumped shoulders, the quiet tears in the meditation hall. She wanted to offer something, some small tenderness to counter the harshness of the season and the harshness people so often turned on themselves. She imagined tired practitioners finding the words and feeling, even for a moment, less alone. The thought brought her quiet joy. But as the winter deepened and Yara continued her nightly writing, something unexpected happened. She began to realize that she needed the words as much as anyone. One evening, exhausted after a long day of scrubbing and hauling water, she paused in a dim corridor and read what she had written the night before. "Be gentle with yourself. You are enough." The words stopped her. She had written them for others, but reading them now, she felt their absence in her own heart. She never spoke to herself this way. She never offered herself the kindness she so freely gave to strangers. Yara sat down on the cold floor, her back against the wall, and wept. She realized she had spent years caring for this place and everyone in it, but never for herself. She worked until her hands ached and her back throbbed, and then she worked more, believing rest was laziness, believing she had to earn her worth through endless effort. She never said to herself, "You are doing your best. It is enough." She never allowed herself the compassion she believed others deserved. The notes on the wall became a mirror, reflecting back the love she withheld from her own heart. The next evening, Yara did something she had never done before. She wrote a note specifically for herself and read it aloud in the empty hallway. "Yara, you are allowed to rest. You do not have to be perfect. You are valuable not because of what you do, but because of who you are." Her voice cracked, the words feeling strange and vulnerable in her mouth. But she kept reading, kept speaking to herself with the tenderness she had always reserved for others. It felt like a beginning, like planting a seed in frozen ground and trusting it might someday grow. In Buddhism, the practice of metta, loving kindness, is often taught in stages. We offer metta to ourselves, then to loved ones, then to neutral people, then even to those we find difficult. But many practitioners skip the first step, unable or unwilling to direct kindness inward. We believe, often unconsciously, that we do not deserve it, that self-compassion is selfish or indulgent. But the Buddha taught clearly, you yourself deserve your love and affection as much as anybody in the entire universe. Metta toward oneself is not optional, it is foundational. Without it, our compassion for others becomes strained, performative, unsustainable. Thich Nhat Hanh taught about the practice of Tonglen, taking in suffering and sending out relief. But he emphasized that we must learn to do this for ourselves first. We must learn to hold our own pain with tenderness, to offer ourselves the comfort we would offer a suffering friend. Yara's notes on the wall were an unconscious Tonglen practice, an offering of care. But until she included herself as a recipient, the circle remained incomplete. When she finally allowed herself to receive her own kindness, something broke open. She stopped dividing the world into those worthy of compassion and herself unworthy. She became whole. Over the following weeks, Yara continued writing notes, but now she wrote them as much for herself as for anyone else. She read them aloud as she worked, letting the words soak into her tired body, her weary heart. She began to rest without guilt, to stop when her body asked, to treat herself as someone deserving of care. Other monks and nuns began to notice the notes and mention them in passing, expressing gratitude for the mysterious encouragement. Yara smiled, but said nothing. The notes were her practice, her way of learning to love herself and others without separation. One spring morning, the head monja approached Yara as she swept the main hall. "I have been reading your notes all winter," she said kindly. "They have been a gift to many of us, but I wonder, have you been reading them for yourself?" Yara paused, then nodded, her eyes damp. "I am learning to," she said quietly. The monja smiled and placed a hand on Yara's shoulder. Good. That is the practice. We cannot give what we do not have. Love yourself first, and your love for others will flow naturally, without depletion. Yara bowed, grateful for the permission, for the reminder that self-care was not selfishness but wisdom. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, imagine writing a note to yourself on the wall of your own heart. What words of kindness have you been withholding? What gentleness have you offered to everyone but yourself? Write those words now, even if only in your mind. Speak them aloud if you can. You are doing your best. You are enough. You deserve rest. You deserve love. Let these words land in you, not as empty platitudes, but as truth. Receive your own kindness tonight, and let it soften the places that have been hard for too long. The bell that rang too softly. Sensitivity as strength. Aaron was a young apprentice at a mountain monastery, chosen to learn the sacred task of ringing the temple bell. The bell was massive, cast in bronze centuries ago, and its deep tone called the community to prayer and meditation each morning and evening. Aaron felt honored to be given this responsibility, but also deeply inadequate. No matter how hard she struck the bell, the sound that emerged was softer than when others rang it. The older monks could produce a resonant boom that echoed across the valley, shaking the air and stirring the heart. Aaron's strike yielded only a gentler tone, clear but not commanding. She practiced every day, trying to swing the wooden mallet with more force, more confidence. But her arms were slight, and her natural temperament was quiet. She could not summon the kind of power that others seemed to wield so effortlessly. After each ringing, she felt the weight of failure, imagining the disappointment of those who heard her inadequate call. She began to dread the task, started to believe she had been given a role she could never properly fill. Her sensitivity, which she had always known was part of her nature, now seemed like a deficiency, a weakness that disqualified her from important work. One evening, after a particularly discouraging practice session, the maestra found Aaron sitting by the bell, her face hidden in her hands. He sat beside her without speaking, simply present in the gathering dusk. Finally, Aaron whispered, "I cannot ring the bell the way it should be rung. My sound is too soft. I am failing." The maestra listened, then asked gently, "Who told you the bell should be rung only one way?" Aaron looked up, confused. "The older monks ring it loud," she said. "That is how it has always been done." The maestra nodded slowly, then said, "Come with me." He led her to the meditation hall, where an elderly nun sat in quiet prayer, her eyes closed, her face serene. The maestra gestured for Aaron to watch. When the evening bell rings loudly, he whispered. It startles her. Her heart races. She loses her concentration. She has told me this many times, but she is too kind to complain. Your softer bell allows her to transition gently into practice. It does not jar her. It invites her. Aaron stared, unable to speak. She had never considered that loudness might not always be better, that gentleness could serve a purpose. The maestra continued, his voice soft as the evening air. There are many in our community who carry broken hearts, who have known trauma and harshness. For them, a loud bell is a violence, even if unintended. Your bell speaks to them differently. It says, "You are safe here. You do not need to brace yourself. Come as you are." Aaron felt tears spill over, a lifetime of shame about her sensitivity beginning to crack. She had always been told, implicitly and explicitly, that softness was a problem, that she needed to be stronger, louder, more forceful. But the maestra was offering a different truth. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, Arin. It is a form of precision, a way of attuning to what others need. Not everyone needs to be shaken awake. Some need to be gently invited. You are not failing. You are offering something the loud bells cannot. Do not try to be someone else. Be who you are, and trust that your particular way of being serves those who need it. Arin bowed deeply, her whole body trembling with relief and recognition. She had been abandoning herself, trying to force her nature into a mold that did not fit. In Zen teaching, there is a recognition that the Dharma manifests in infinite forms, that there is no single correct way to practice or to serve. The poet Ryokan lived simply and quietly, writing gentle verses and playing with children, while other monks engaged in rigorous debate and austere discipline. Both paths were valid. Both served. The teaching of Upaya, skillful means, reminds us that different circumstances call for different approaches. A loud bell and a soft bell both have their place. Neither is superior. Each meets a particular need. Arin began to ring the bell with a new understanding. She stopped trying to produce someone else's sound and honored her own. She rang with full presence and intention, not force. The tone was still gentle, but now she understood it as a gift rather than a failure. She noticed who responded to her bell, the ones who seemed to soften and settle as the sound washed over them. She saw that her contribution mattered, that her particular way of being in the world was not a mistake, but a necessity for those who needed gentleness. Self-acceptance, for Arin, meant releasing the belief that she had to be other than she was. It meant trusting that her sensitivity, her quietness, her inability to produce loudness were not defects, but qualities that served a real purpose. She stopped comparing herself to the older monks and started honoring her own hands, her own heart, her own sound. The world, she realized, needs both the loud and the soft, the forceful and the gentle. There is room for all of it, and trying to be something you are not only creates suffering. Over time, Arin became known as the one who rang the evening bell with particular tenderness, and those who struggled with harshness sought out that time for meditation. They told her quietly and with gratitude that her bell helped them feel safe, helped them return to practice when other sounds had driven them away. Arin learned that her sensitivity was not a burden to overcome, but a strength to cultivate, a way of touching the world that was uniquely hers. She stopped apologizing for who she was and started offering herself fully, without reservation. Tonight, wherever you are tender, wherever you feel too soft for this hard world, consider this. Your sensitivity may be exactly what someone needs. It may be a form of wisdom, a way of perceiving and responding that force cannot replicate. Do not try to harden yourself to fit an imagined standard. Let yourself be gentle. Let yourself offer the soft bell in a world that already has enough loud ones. You are not too much or too little. You are precisely calibrated for the role only you can play. Rest in that truth tonight, and let your sensitivity be honored, not hidden. A night without mantras, the dignity of rest. Thomas was a disciplined practitioner, perhaps the most devoted at the monastery. Every morning he rose before dawn to meditate for 2 hours. Every evening he chanted mantras for another hour, his voice steady and clear. He fasted on the new moon, performed prostrations until his knees ached, and studied sacred texts late into the night. He believed that dedication meant never resting, that spiritual progress required relentless effort. He wore his exhaustion like a badge of honor, proof that he was serious, committed, worthy. But one night, after weeks of barely sleeping, Thomas collapsed. He had been in the middle of his evening mantras when dizziness overtook him, and he fell forward. his body simply refusing to continue. When he woke, he was lying on a mat in the infirmary, a cool cloth on his forehead. Monya Lian sat beside him, her face calm and concerned. "You pushed too hard," she said gently. "Your body is asking you to stop." Tomas felt a wave of shame. "I failed," he whispered. "I could not even complete my practice. I am weak." Lian shook her head slowly, her eyes full of compassion. "Tomas, do you believe the Dharma requires you to destroy yourself? Do you think the Buddha taught us to practice until we collapse?" Tomas did not know how to answer. He had always believed that more effort was better, that rest was a form of laziness, a concession to weakness. Lian continued, "There is a teaching you have missed. The Buddha spoke of the middle way, the path between extreme austerity and indulgence. You have swung so far into austerity that you are harming yourself. That is not wisdom, that is violence." Tomas felt tears sting his eyes. He had been so focused on achieving some imagined spiritual ideal that he had ignored the suffering of his own body, his own heart. He had treated himself like an obstacle to overcome, rather than a being deserving of care. Lian leaned closer, her voice soft but firm. "Tonight, you will do no mantras. You will not meditate. You will not study. You will simply lie here, breathe, and rest. That is your practice tonight. Can you do that?" Tomas wanted to protest, to insist that he needed to make up for lost time, but his body was so tired, and some part of him was desperate for permission to stop. He nodded, and Lian smiled. "Good. Rest is not the enemy of practice. It is part of practice. Your body is not separate from your spiritual life. It is the vessel that allows you to practice at all. If you break it, you break your path. Honoring your need for rest is honoring the Dharma." She left him then, and Thomas lay in the dim infirmary, listening to his own breath. It felt strange and almost frightening to do nothing, to have no task, no goal, no mantra to repeat. But as the minutes passed, he felt his body begin to release, his muscles softening, his mind quieting in a way it had not in months. In that stillness, Thomas began to understand something he had resisted for years. Effort alone does not lead to awakening. Striving, pushing, forcing, these can become forms of clinging, of ego trying to achieve enlightenment as if it were a trophy to win. The teaching of Wu Wei, non-doing or effortless action, points to a different way. It suggests that sometimes the most profound practice is to stop, to allow, to simply be without adding anything. Rest is not failure, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that we are human, finite, in need of care. The Buddha himself, before his enlightenment, practiced extreme asceticism until he nearly died. He realized that punishing the body did not free the mind. He ate, he rested, and only then, in a state of balance and presence, did he awaken under the Bodhi tree. The middle way is not mediocrity. It is discernment, the ability to know when to exert effort and when to release it. Thomas had lost that discernment, had mistaken exhaustion for devotion. Now, lying in the infirmary, he was learning that self-acceptance includes accepting the body's limits, accepting the need for rest without shame. Over the following days, Lian guided Thomas in rebuilding his practice with balance. He meditated, but not to the point of collapse. He chanted, but also allowed silence. He studied, but also slept. At first it felt indulgent, like he was slacking, but gradually he noticed something surprising. His practice deepened. When he was rested, his meditation was more focused, his chanting more heartfelt, his understanding of the texts more clear. He had been so busy performing spirituality that he had not been present for it. Rest allowed presence to return. Thomas learned that self-acceptance is not about proving yourself through relentless effort. It is about meeting yourself where you are, honoring what you need, and trusting that you are enough even when you are not producing, not achieving, not pushing. Dignity does not come from what we do. It comes from the simple fact of our existence, our inherent worth as beings. The night he lay in the infirmary doing nothing, he was no less valuable than the nights he chanted for hours. He was simply being, and being is always enough. One evening, months later, Thomas found himself exhausted again after a long day of work in the garden. Instead of forcing himself through his evening practice, he simply lay down, placed a hand on his heart, and whispered, "It is okay to rest. You are still worthy." The permission he gave himself felt like a homecoming, like finally being on his own side instead of at war with himself. He slept deeply that night, and when he woke, he felt more at peace than he had in years. He had stopped trying to earn his worth and started simply accepting it. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, let yourself rest without guilt. You do not need to do anything more to be worthy of peace. You do not need to achieve or prove or perfect yourself before you are allowed to lay down your burdens. Simply being here, breathing, allowing your body to rest, this is enough. This is sacred. Let yourself receive the gift of doing nothing, and trust that in the morning you will still be whole, still be worthy, still be exactly who you are meant to be. Rest now. You have permission. The unfinished calligraphy. The beauty of incompletion. Junko was a calligrapher of considerable skill, trained since childhood in the art of brushwork and ink. Her characters were elegant and precise, each stroke a meditation. She had been commissioned years ago to create a large calligraphy panel for the main hall of a temple, a piece that would hang above the altar and inspire all who entered. She began the work with great care, selecting the finest paper, grinding ink with reverence, centering herself in stillness before each session. The piece was to be a rendering of the Heart Sutra, sacred and profound. But halfway through the work, Junko made a mistake. One character was slightly malformed, the balance just barely off. To most eyes, it would be invisible, a minor imperfection in an otherwise flawless piece. But to Junko, it was a glaring failure, an unforgivable flaw that ruined everything. She could not continue. She rolled up the unfinished panel, placed it in a wooden tube, and hid it away in a storage room. She told the temple she could not complete the commission, offered to return the payment, and walked away, carrying a weight of shame that grew heavier with each passing year. Junko could not forgive herself for the mistake, could not accept that something imperfect might still have value. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, the instant the brush slipped, the way her concentration had faltered. She believed the mistake defined her, that it proved she was not as skilled as people thought, that she was a fraud. She stopped taking commissions for large pieces, afraid she would fail again. The unfinished calligraphy haunted her, a symbol of everything she could not accept about herself. Years later, an old friend who worked at the temple contacted Junko. While cleaning the storage rooms, they had found the rolled panel and opened it. The friend was moved by the beauty of the work, even unfinished, and asked if Junko would allow it to be displayed. Junko's first instinct was to refuse, to demand the panel be destroyed. But something in her hesitated. She agreed to visit the temple and see the piece one more time before deciding. She arrived on a quiet afternoon, her heart tight with dread and old shame. The panel had been mounted and hung temporarily in a side hall. Junko stood before it, bracing herself for the wave of failure she expected to feel. But something unexpected happened. She saw the work with new eyes, eyes that had lived years since the moment of the mistake. She saw the strength of the characters she had completed, the way the brushstrokes held energy and presence. She saw the space where the work ended, not as failure, but as openness, a kind of silence that allowed the viewer to participate, to imagine, to complete the piece in their own heart. The single imperfect character, the one that had tormented her, now seemed to add something human to the work. It was a reminder that the hand holding the brush was mortal, that perfection is an illusion, that beauty often lives in the tension between intention and reality. Junko realized that she had been measuring the piece against an impossible standard, one that left no room for the unpredictable flow of life. She had rejected the work because it was not perfect, and in doing so, she had rejected herself. She had never considered that incompletion might have its own kind of wholeness. In Zen aesthetics, there is a principle called wabi-sabi, the acceptance and appreciation of imperfection and impermanence. A cracked tea bowl, a weathered gate, an unfinished painting, these are not failures. They are expressions of the transient nature of all things, reminders that nothing lasts, nothing is finished, nothing is perfect, and that is exactly as it should be. The teaching of anicca, impermanence, is central to Buddhist understanding. Everything is in flux, always becoming, never complete. To demand perfection is to misunderstand the nature of existence itself. Junko stood before the panel and wept, not with shame this time, but with something closer to relief. She saw that the unfinished work was a portrait of a moment in her life, an honest record of who she was at that time. It did not need to be complete to be true. It did not need to be perfect to be valuable. She had spent years punishing herself for being human, for making a mistake, for not achieving an ideal that existed only in her mind. She had abandoned the work, and in doing so, she had abandoned herself. But now she could see it differently. She could see it with compassion. The temple asked again if they could display the panel permanently. This time, Junko agreed. She wrote a small note to accompany it, explaining that the work was unfinished, that it contained a mistake, and that she had once believed this made it worthless. But now, she wrote, I understand that this panel teaches something my perfect work never could. It teaches that we are all unfinished, all imperfect, and that this does not diminish our value. It teaches that beauty and brokenness are not opposites, they are companions. The note was placed beside the calligraphy, and visitors often spent long moments reading it, many of them in tears. Junko began to create again, but with a different spirit. She no longer demanded perfection from herself. She allowed mistakes, allowed the unexpected, allowed the work to be what it was rather than what she thought it should be. She found more freedom, more joy, more presence in the act of creation. She learned that self-acceptance is not about convincing yourself you are flawless. It is about releasing the need to be flawless, about meeting yourself as you are, in process, unfinished, and still worthy of love. The incomplete calligraphy became her teacher, a daily reminder that she did not need to be perfect to be whole. Tonight, as you rest, consider what unfinished parts of yourself you have been hiding, what mistakes you have been using to define your worth. What if those very things, the places where you fell short, the moments where you did not meet your own impossible standards, are not evidence of failure, but proof of your humanity? What if incompletion is not a problem to solve, but a truth to accept? Let yourself be unfinished tonight. Let yourself be imperfect. You are still whole. You are still worthy. Rest in that, and let the pressure to be perfect finally fall away. Seeds left in the pocket. Potential is not the only value. Matteo was a gardener at a monastery known for its beautiful grounds, where vegetables grew in neat rows and flowers bloomed in careful succession throughout the seasons. He took great pride in his work, in the way he coaxed life from the soil, in the abundance he helped create. Each autumn, he collected seeds from the strongest plants, drying them carefully and storing them for spring planting. It was a ritual he loved, a way of honoring the cycle of growth and ensuring the garden's future. One year, as Matteo prepared for winter, he placed a small pouch of heirloom tomato seeds in the pocket of his work coat, intending to plant them in a special plot the following spring. But he forgot. Winter came, and he hung the coat in the back of a shed, turning his attention to other tasks, to pruning and planning, and the quiet work of the cold months. Spring arrived, and he planted the main garden with seeds from his larger stores, never remembering the small pouch hidden in the coat pocket. The season unfolded, and the garden thrived without those particular seeds. The following autumn, when Matteo pulled out his work coat for the cooler weather, he felt something in the pocket. He reached in and found the pouch, the seeds still inside, now more than a year old. His heart sank. He opened the pouch and poured the seeds into his palm. They were dry and brittle, likely no longer viable. He had forgotten them, wasted them, failed to give them the chance to become what they were meant to be. He felt a sharp pang of guilt, a sense of having failed in his responsibility as a gardener. Matteo sat down heavily on a bench outside the shed, the seeds still in his hand, feeling a surprising weight of grief. It was not really about the seeds, he realized. It was about all the things in his life he felt he had wasted, all the potential he believed he had squandered, all the ways he had not lived up to what he thought he should be. The seeds became a symbol of every missed opportunity, every unrealized dream, every version of himself he had not become. He had carried potential in his pocket and let it die, and that felt like a failure too large to forgive. As he sat there, the elderly Monja Camilla walked by and noticed his distress. She sat beside him without asking permission, her presence steady and calm. "What troubles you, Matteo?" she asked gently. He showed her the seeds, explained what had happened, and confessed the weight he felt. "I wasted them," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They could have been plants, could have fed people, could have produced more seeds, and I just forgot. I let them die in my pocket." Camilla took the seeds from his hand and examined them closely, rolling them between her fingers. She smiled, a soft and knowing expression. "Matteo," she said, "these seeds did not die in vain. You carried them with you all year. They were in your pocket as you worked, as you planted other gardens, as you nurtured life. They were companions, witnesses to your days. Not everything must become what we imagine it should be in order to have meaning." She paused, letting the words settle. Sometimes carrying potential is enough. Sometimes keeping something close, even if it never becomes what it could, is its own form of value. Matteo stared at her, the words opening something in him he had not expected. He had always believed that seeds were only valuable if they became plants. That potential was only meaningful if it was realized. But Camilla was suggesting something different. She was saying that the journey mattered, that presence mattered, that not everything needed to be productive to be valuable. The seeds had kept him company. They had been part of his year, held close, even if forgotten. That was not nothing. That was something. In Buddhism, there is a teaching about non-attachment to outcomes, about releasing the need for everything to become what we think it should be. The principle of santosha, contentment, invites us to find peace with what is, rather than constantly striving for what could be. Matteo had been measuring the seeds, and by extension himself, only by productivity, by achievement, by realization of potential. But life is not only about what we produce, it is also about what we carry, what we witness, how we move through time. Not all seeds must sprout. Not all potential must be actualized. Sometimes being is enough, even without becoming. Camilla continued. You are hard on yourself, Matteo, in ways you do not even see. You measure your worth by what you accomplish, by what you create. But you are valuable simply because you exist, not because of what you produce. These seeds are whole, even if they never enter the soil. And so are you. She handed the seeds back to him and stood to leave. Keep them if you like, she said. Let them remind you that not everything must be used to matter. Sometimes it is enough just to be held. Matteo kept the seeds. He placed them in a small clay bowl on the windowsill of his room, where he could see them each morning and evening. They became a meditation for him, a reminder to release the constant pressure to achieve, to produce, to become more than he was. He began to notice other places in his life where he had been judging himself for unrealized potential, for paths not taken, for dreams not pursued. He started to practice gratitude for what was, rather than mourning what was not. He learned that self-acceptance includes accepting the roads not traveled, the seeds not planted, the versions of himself that never came to be. Over time, Matteo's relationship with himself softened. He still worked diligently in the garden, still honored the cycles of planting and harvest. But he stopped equating his value with his productivity. He allowed himself to rest, to be unproductive, to simply exist without purpose. He learned that he was not a machine meant only to produce. He was a living being, worthy of care and rest and space, even when he was not creating anything. The seeds in the bowl were a quiet testament to this truth, a daily reminder that being is enough. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, think of the seeds you carry, the potential you have not realized, the dreams you have not pursued. What if those things do not make you a failure? What if carrying them, holding them close, is enough? What if you are valuable not because of what you produce, but simply because you are? Let yourself rest in that possibility. Let yourself be the seed that does not need to sprout in order to be whole. You are enough, exactly as you are, potential and all. The bow to no one. Honoring your own heart. Rena had been a practitioner at the monastery for many years, known for her humility and her graceful reverence. She bowed deeply and often, a physical expression of respect that came naturally to her. She bowed to the elder monastics, to visiting teachers, to the statues of the Buddha in the meditation hall. She bowed to fellow practitioners when passing them in the corridors, to the trees in the garden, even to the stones that lined the pathways. Her bowing was sincere, a genuine recognition of the sacred in all things. But there was one being to whom Rena never bowed, one presence she never honored with that gesture of respect: herself. It had never occurred to her to do so, and if it had, she would have dismissed it as arrogant, self-indulgent, inappropriate for someone on a spiritual path. She believed humility meant thinking less of herself, making herself smaller, always deferring to others. She poured herself out in service and devotion, but never turned that same reverence inward. She was generous with everyone except herself. One afternoon, the Ancien Sayo, a teacher known for her piercing compassion, invited Rena to her quarters for tea. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, the steam from the tea curling between them. Then Sayo asked, "Rena, you bow to everyone and everything. I have watched you for years, but I have never seen you bow to yourself. Why is that?" Rena looked startled, unsure how to respond. She stammered something about not wanting to be prideful, about the importance of humility. Sayo listened, then set down her cup with deliberate care. Humility, Sayo said slowly, is not self-rejection. It is not pretending you have no value. True humility is seeing yourself clearly, without inflation or deflation, and accepting what you see. You honor the Buddha nature in everyone around you with your bows, but you refuse to acknowledge that same nature in yourself. That is not humility, Rena. That is a subtle form of violence. Rena felt her breath catch. She had never thought of it that way, had never considered that her constant self-dismissal might be harmful, might be a kind of abandonment. Sayo continued, her voice gentle but unyielding. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to stand before a mirror, place your palms together, and bow to yourself. Bow to your own Buddha nature, to the heart that has carried you this far, to the presence that is trying so hard to awaken. Rena felt panic rise. It felt wrong, narcissistic, like a betrayal of everything she had been taught. But Sayo's eyes were kind and firm. This is not about ego, she said. This is about recognizing the truth. You are as worthy of reverence as anyone else in this monastery, as any being in the universe, until you know that in your bones, your compassion for others will always be incomplete. That night, Rena stood alone in her small room, a candle flickering on the shelf, a small mirror propped against the wall. She felt ridiculous, exposed, deeply uncomfortable. She brought her palms together in front of her chest and looked at her own reflection. For a long moment, she could not move. Her mind filled with objections, with shame, with the fear that this was wrong. But she remembered Sayo's words, and she made herself begin. She bowed slowly, her forehead almost touching her fingertips, her eyes closing as her body bent forward. Tears came immediately, unexpected and overwhelming. She had spent so many years dismissing herself, making herself small, believing that her worth was contingent on how much she gave, how little she asked. She had never stopped to consider that she too deserved the respect she so freely offered to others. The bow felt like a homecoming, like finally acknowledging a part of herself that had been waiting in exile, hoping to be seen. When she straightened, she looked at her reflection through tears and whispered, "I see you. I honor you. You are enough." In Buddhist teaching, the concept of Buddha nature, or Tathagatagarbha, holds that every being possesses the seed of enlightenment, the potential for awakening. This includes you, not someday, not when you are better or more advanced, but now, exactly as you are. The Buddha taught you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. This is not metaphor. This is truth. When we refuse to honor ourselves, we are denying a fundamental aspect of the Dharma. We are saying that Buddha nature exists everywhere except in us, which is a delusion. Rena began a new practice. Each evening before bed, she would bow to herself in the mirror. At first, it felt forced and strange, but over time, it became sacred, a moment of reconnection with the part of herself she had been ignoring. She began to notice how this practice changed her. She was less depleted by her service to others because she was also serving herself. She was more present in her relationships because she was no longer abandoning herself to please others. She learned that true generosity flows from a full well, not an empty one. Other practitioners began to notice a change in Rena. She seemed more grounded, more at peace, less driven by an anxious need to prove her worth. When Sayo asked her how the practice was going, Rina bowed deeply to her teacher, and then, for the first time in public, she also bowed to herself, her palms together, her head inclined toward her own heart. Sayo smiled, her eyes bright with approval. "Now you understand," she said. "Now you are learning to love the whole world, including the part of it that wears your name. Tonight, before you sleep, if you are able, stand or sit before a mirror. Bring your palms together at your heart. Look into your own eyes and bow. Bow to the being who has survived everything that brought you to this moment. Bow to the heart that keeps trying, keeps opening, keeps searching for peace. Bow to the Buddha nature that lives in you, that has always lived in you, whether you have acknowledged it or not. You are worthy of your own reverence. You are worthy of your own love. Let this bow be a beginning, a small act of reconciliation with the part of yourself you have been leaving out. You deserve to be included in your own compassion. The story told only once. The freedom of letting go. One evening, a wandering visitor arrived at the monastery just as the community was gathering for the evening meal. He was old and weathered, his robe faded, his face lined with years of travel and experience. The abbot welcomed him and invited him to share the meal and, if he wished, to offer a teaching to the group of novicios who were studying in the hall. The visitor agreed, and after the meal, he sat before the young practitioners, his posture humble, his eyes clear and calm. He told them a story, his voice quiet but steady, about a mistake he had made many years ago when he was young. He had been entrusted with an important task at his own monastery, the safeguarding of a sacred text during a time of unrest. But he had been careless, distracted by fear and inexperience, and the text had been lost, possibly destroyed. The community had been devastated. He had been filled with shame so deep he could barely breathe. He carried the weight of that failure for years, allowing it to define him, to shape every choice he made afterward. The visitor described how he had punished himself endlessly, how he had refused forgiveness from others because he could not forgive himself. He spoke of the isolation that came from holding on to guilt, the way it separated him from connection, from joy, from any sense of peace. His voice was calm as he spoke, but the novicios could hear the weight of what he was sharing, the reality of suffering that had shaped a life. One of them, a young man named Kaito, listened with particular intensity, his own heart heavy with a mistake he had made recently, something he could not stop replaying in his mind. When the visitor finished the story, there was a long silence. Then one of the novicios asked, "How did you forgive yourself? How did you let it go?" The visitor smiled, a sad and gentle expression. "I told the story," he said. "I told it to someone who listened without judgment, and then I made a choice. I decided I would only tell it once more, and that telling would be the last. This, tonight, is that telling. After this, I will not speak of it again. Not because I am hiding or pretending it did not happen, but because I have learned what it had to teach me. I have carried it long enough." The novicios were silent, absorbing the weight of what he was saying. The visitor continued, "We believe that if we stop repeating our failures, if we stop defining ourselves by our worst moments, we are somehow dishonoring the harm we caused or letting ourselves off too easily. But that is not true. Continuing to punish yourself does not undo the past. It only ensures that the suffering continues, that the mistake claims more and more of your life. At some point, you must choose to release it, not because you have earned release, but because holding on is destroying you." Kaito felt his throat tighten, tears threatening. He had been carrying his own mistake like a stone in his chest, going over it again and again, convinced that if he just thought about it enough, replayed it enough, he could somehow change what had happened. But the visitor was offering a different path. He was saying that some stories do not need to be told over and over. Some wounds do not need to be reopened constantly to prove they were real. The past had happened. It could not be undone. But it also did not have to be the only story, the defining story, forever. In Buddhism, the teaching of anicca, impermanence, reminds us that everything changes, including ourselves. We are not the same person we were when we made the mistake. Cells have died and been replaced, experiences have shaped us, understanding has deepened. Clinging to an old identity, even an identity as someone who failed, is a form of attachment. The Buddha taught about nirodha, cessation, the possibility of suffering coming to an end. This includes the suffering we inflict on ourselves by refusing to let go of the past. The visitor stood to leave, bowing to the novichos and thanking them for listening. As he walked toward the door, Kaito stood suddenly and approached him. He bowed deeply and asked, "What if I cannot forgive myself? What if the guilt is too strong?" The visitor placed a gentle hand on Kaito's shoulder. "Then practice," he said. "Forgiveness is not a single moment. It is a practice, repeated daily, sometimes hourly. Each time the guilt arises, meet it with compassion and remind yourself that you are more than your worst moment. Eventually, the practice becomes the truth. It takes time, but it is possible. I am proof." Kaito returned to his seat, something shifting in his chest. The visitor left the monastery that night and was never seen again, but his teaching remained. Kaito began his own practice. Each time the memory of his mistake arose, instead of spiraling into shame, he would say quietly to himself, "I acknowledge this. I learned from this. And now I let it go." It felt false at first, like lying to himself, but over weeks and months, the grip of the guilt began to loosen. He started to believe that he could be more than his mistake, that his life could hold more than regret. He realized that telling the story of his failure over and over to himself and others had kept him trapped in that moment, unable to move forward. The visitor had shown him that it was possible to honor what happened, to learn from it, and then to release it, not to forget, not to pretend it never occurred, but to stop letting it define everything. The story could be told once, held with honesty, and then set down. That was not denial. That was freedom. That was compassion. Tonight, as you rest, think of the stories you tell yourself about who you are, especially the stories of failure and regret. How many times have you repeated them? How much of your energy goes into reliving moments that cannot be changed? What if you allowed yourself to tell those stories one last time, with honesty and self-compassion, and then to let them go? Not to erase them, but to stop giving them all your attention, all your power. You are not your mistakes. You are a living being, capable of change, worthy of forgiveness, deserving of peace. Let the old stories rest tonight. Let yourself be more than what you regret. The cloak turned inside out, finding grace in mistakes. Amala was a traveling pilgrim who had been walking for weeks through mountain passes and valley paths, seeking teachings from various monasteries. She carried little with her, only a walking stick, a small bag of belongings, and a simple woolen cloak that protected her from rain and cold. One rainy morning, she dressed quickly in the dark, eager to reach the next monastery before nightfall. She pulled on her cloak without really looking and set out into the drizzle, her mind already on the road ahead. It was not until midday, when she stopped at a stream to drink, that she caught her reflection in the water and realized her mistake. Her cloak was inside out, the rough inner lining facing the world, the seams exposed. She felt a hot wave of embarrassment. She had walked through a village that morning, had greeted fellow travelers, had even stopped to ask directions from a farmer. All of them had seen her like this, disheveled and careless. She felt foolish, like a child who could not even dress herself properly. Her first instinct was to take the cloak off immediately and fix it. But it was still raining and the cloak was already soaked. Reversing it now would mean wearing the wet side against her skin, which seemed worse than the embarrassment of looking foolish. So she continued walking, the shame burning in her chest, convinced that everyone she passed was judging her, thinking her incompetent or strange. She imagined arriving at the monastery in this state, the monks noticing, whispering about the traveler who did not even know how to wear her own cloak. The day felt ruined, tainted by this small, stupid mistake. By late afternoon, Amala reached the monastery, exhausted and drenched. A young monk greeted her at the gate and welcomed her inside, offering her tea and a place by the fire to dry off. As she sat warming herself, the monk smiled and gestured to her cloak, which she had draped over a chair. "I see you wear your cloak inside out," he said, not unkindly. Amala flushed, ready to apologize and explain. But before she could speak, he continued, "That is actually quite clever in the rain. The inner lining absorbs water and dries faster, and it keeps the outer layer dry for later. I have done that myself on long journeys." Amala stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. What she had thought was a mortifying mistake, proof of her carelessness, was being reframed as something intentional, even wise. The monk went on, oblivious to her shock. "It also keeps you warmer in the cold, because the rougher fabric traps more heat against your body. You must be an experienced traveler to know these things." Amala opened her mouth to correct him, to confess that it had been an accident, that she had felt ashamed all day. But something stopped her. She realized that the shame had been entirely self-imposed, a story she had been telling herself, not a truth reflected in the world. No one else had judged her. No one else had thought less of her. She had spent the entire day in a prison of her own making, convinced that a small mistake defined her, diminished her, made her unworthy. But the monk saw the same cloak and found function, found wisdom. The difference was not in the cloak, it was in the interpretation. Amala realized with sudden clarity how often she did this, how quickly she turned ordinary human errors into evidence of fundamental inadequacy. She was her own harshest judge, seeing failure where others saw nothing worth noting. In Zen teaching, there is a principle that the obstacle is the way, that what we perceive as mistakes or wrong turns often contain unexpected gifts. Alan Watts taught that life is not about avoiding errors, but about dancing with them, allowing them to become part of the improvisation rather than stopping the music. Amala's inside-out cloak had actually served her better in the rain, kept her warmer, dried faster. Her mistake had become a kind of grace, but only when she stopped judging it so harshly, only when she allowed it to simply be what it was. Over the following days, Amala stayed at the monastery and reflected on the cloak incident. She began to notice how often she catastrophized small mistakes, how quickly she moved from "I did something wrong" to "I am wrong." She saw how exhausting it was, how it drained her energy and joy, how it kept her in a constant state of low-level anxiety and shame. She started to practice meeting her mistakes with curiosity instead of condemnation, asking "What can I learn from this?" instead of "What is wrong with me?" The shift was subtle, but profound. She realized that self-acceptance does not mean being perfect or never making mistakes. It means meeting mistakes with kindness, with the understanding that being human includes fumbling, forgetting, getting things backwards sometimes. It means releasing the belief that every error is a referendum on your worth. Amala learned to laugh at herself more gently, to forgive more quickly, to move on without carrying the weight of shame. The cloak, now deliberately worn inside out when it rained, became a reminder of this practice, a symbol of grace found in the unexpected. When Amala eventually left the monastery to continue her journey, she thanked the young monk for his hospitality. He smiled and said, "May your travels be blessed, and may you always find warmth, even when things are turned around." Amala bowed, grateful not just for his kindness, but for the teaching she had received through his simple misinterpretation. She walked on, her cloak worn however it needed to be worn, her heart a little lighter, a little less afraid of getting things wrong. She had learned that mistakes do not define us. Our response to them does. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, think of the small mistakes you made today, the things you got wrong or forgot or did backward. What if those moments are not evidence of your inadequacy, but simply part of being alive, being human, being in process? What if you could meet them with the same kindness you would offer a friend, or even the kindness the monk offered Amala, seeing function and wisdom where you only saw failure? Let yourself be imperfect tonight. Let yourself make mistakes and still be worthy of rest, of peace, of love. You are not your errors. You are so much more. Candles in the storage room. Hidden contributions matter. Bruno was a young acolito at a large monastery, one of many who served in the background, performing tasks that kept the community functioning. He had arrived with dreams of deep study, of sitting at the feet of great teachers, of engaging in profound philosophical debates about the nature of reality and enlightenment. But instead, he found himself assigned to mundane tasks, sweeping floors, washing dishes, hauling water. He accepted these assignments without complaint, but inside, he felt a growing disappointment, a sense that his potential was being wasted on work that did not matter. One autumn, the head monk called Bruno to his office and gave him a new task. He was to be responsible for the storage room in the basement, a dim and dusty space filled with supplies for the monastery. His job was to keep inventory of the candles stored there, making sure they were dry and accounted for, replacing any that had deteriorated. Bruno accepted the assignment with a sinking heart. This felt like the least important job in the entire monastery, a task so minor it barely seemed worth doing. He wondered if he had done something wrong, if this was a punishment or a sign that he was not valued. Week after week, Bruno descended into the storage room, counted candles, checked for mold or dampness, and updated his records in a leather-bound ledger. No one ever asked about his work. No one seemed to notice or care. He saw the other acolitos engaging in study groups, assisting with ceremonies, traveling with teachers to other temples. He felt invisible, forgotten, relegated to the basement while meaningful life happened elsewhere. He began to resent the candles, the storage room, the whole situation. What am I even doing here? He asked himself in the dim light. What difference does any of this make? One winter night, a fierce storm rolled through the mountains, knocking out power to the entire region. The monastery was plunged into darkness. Bruno was in the main hall when it happened, and he heard the immediate rustle of concern, the voices calling out in the sudden blackness. Within minutes, the head monk's voice rang out, calm and authoritative. "Bruno, go to the storage room and bring candles. We will need many of them." Bruno moved quickly, descending the familiar stairs even in the dark, his feet knowing the way from months of repetition. He gathered armfuls of candles, the ones he had been carefully tending, and brought them up to the main hall. Others joined him, and soon the monastery was filled with soft, flickering light. The candles illuminated the meditation hall, the dining area, the sleeping quarters. They allowed the evening prayers to continue, allowed people to move safely through the corridors, allowed warmth and a sense of calm to settle over the community, despite the storm raging outside. Bruno stood in the main hall, watching the light spread, and felt something crack open in his chest. The head monk approached him, a candle in his own hand, his face warm with gratitude. "Bruno," he said quietly, "because of your faithful work, we have light tonight. You have been preparing for this moment for months without knowing it. Your hidden work in the storage room was not insignificant. It was essential. We depended on it, even if we did not say so." Bruno felt tears sting his eyes. He had thought his work did not matter because it was not visible, because it was not celebrated. But the monk was showing him that significance and recognition are not the same thing. In Buddhism, the concept of dana, generosity, includes not just grand gestures, but small, faithful acts of service. The teaching of karma reminds us that all actions have consequences, that everything we do matters in ways we cannot always see. The Buddha spoke of right livelihood and right action, emphasizing that work done with presence and care is spiritual practice, regardless of how humble it appears. Bruno had been measuring his worth by visibility, by status, by how impressive his tasks seemed. But the truth was that his quiet, unseen work sustained the community just as much as the work done in daylight. Bruno returned to the storage room with a different heart. He no longer saw the task as beneath him, or as evidence that he was unimportant. He saw it as a trust, a responsibility, a way of holding space for the community's needs. He began to take even more care, organizing the candles so they would be easy to access in an emergency, checking them more frequently, ensuring the room was dry and well maintained. His work became a meditation, a practice of faithfulness, a way of loving the community through small, invisible acts. Over time, Bruno's resentment dissolved. He stopped comparing himself to others, stopped wishing for different assignments. He accepted that his path of service looked different from what he had imagined, and that was not a problem. It was simply the truth. He learned that self-acceptance includes accepting the particular role you are given, the specific way you are asked to contribute, even if it does not match your fantasies or earn you recognition. Every role in the Sangha matters. Every task, however small, upholds the whole. Years later, when Bruno was no longer responsible for the storage room, he would sometimes visit it, standing in the quiet, dim space and remembering what it had taught him. He had learned that worth is not determined by applause, that contribution is not measured by visibility, that faithfulness in small things is its own form of greatness. He had learned to honor his own quiet work, to stop waiting for external validation, to find meaning in simply showing up and doing what was needed. The candles had been his teachers, and the dark storage room had been his temple. Tonight, as you rest, think of the quiet, unseen work you do, the contributions you make that no one acknowledges or celebrates. What if that work matters more than you know? What if your faithfulness in small things is holding up something much larger than you can see? Let yourself honor your own hidden labor. Let yourself accept that you do not need to be visible to be valuable. You are enough, even in the dim storage room, even when no one is watching. Your small light matters. It always has. The bowl returned empty. Being is the offering. Lila was a woman from the village near the monastery, a widow who lived simply in a small house at the edge of the forest. She had little money and no family nearby. but she had always felt a connection to the monastery and the monks who lived there. Each month, the villagers would bring offerings to the temple, rice and vegetables and sweets, filling lacquered bowls and presenting them with bows and gratitude. Lila participated in this tradition for years, always managing to bring something, even if it was modest. The act of giving made her feel part of the community, connected to something larger than her solitary life. But one particularly difficult winter, Lila's small garden failed. The cold came early, killing the late vegetables she had been counting on. She had no rice to spare, no flour for sweets. The day of the monthly offering approached, and Lila felt a deep shame. She had nothing to give. She considered staying home, avoiding the temple altogether, so she would not have to face the monks and other villagers with empty hands. But something in her resisted that impulse. She decided she would go anyway. Even if she had nothing to offer, she would bring the empty bowl. Lila walked to the monastery slowly, the empty bowl wrapped in cloth and held carefully in her arms as if it contained something precious. When she arrived, the courtyard was full of villagers presenting their offerings, bowls overflowing with abundance. Lila felt small and ashamed, her empty bowl a glaring testament to her inadequacy. She almost turned back, but the monk Haru noticed her standing at the edge of the courtyard and approached with a gentle smile. He gestured for her to come forward. Lila hesitated, then walked to the offering table, her face burning. She unwrapped the bowl and set it down among the others, the emptiness of it stark and undeniable. She bowed quickly, her eyes on the ground, and began to turn away. But Haru reached out and gently stopped her. "Lila," he said softly, "thank you." She looked up at him, confused. "I have nothing," she whispered. "The bowl is empty. I wanted to bring something, but I have nothing." Haru smiled, his eyes warm with understanding. "You are here," he said. "That is not nothing. You came, even with empty hands, and that presence is a gift. Your being here matters more than what you carry." Lila felt tears spill over. She had believed that her value was in what she could offer, what she could produce, what she could give from her resources. She had not considered that simply showing up, simply being present, could be enough. Haru continued, "We receive your empty bowl with gratitude." It reminds us that offerings are not about abundance or proving worth. They are about connection, about showing up, about being part of the community. You have given us something today, Lila. You have given us your presence, your honesty, your vulnerability. That is a profound offering. Haru lifted the empty bowl and placed it carefully on the altar alongside the full ones. He bowed to it, and Lila watched in shock as other monks joined him, each bowing to the empty bowl as if it contained the greatest treasure. One of the younger monks spoke quietly to the group. "This bowl teaches us about sunyata, emptiness. It reminds us that form is not where value lives. The essence of the offering is not the rice or the sweets. It is the heart that brings them, the intention, the connection. This empty bowl carries all of that and more." In Zen Buddhism, the teaching of sunyata, or emptiness, is central. It points to the truth that things do not have inherent, independent existence. A bowl is not valuable because it is full. It is valuable because it can hold, because it can receive, because it participates in the flow of giving and receiving. Lila's empty bowl was a perfect teaching. It showed that we do not need to be full, to be abundant, to be enough in order to be worthy. We are worthy simply because we are, because we show up, because we exist within the web of connection. Lila returned home that day with her empty bowl, but her heart was full in a way it had not been in years. She realized she had been measuring herself by what she could produce, what she could give, what she had to offer from her limited resources. She had not considered that her simple presence, her willingness to be seen even in her emptiness, was itself a gift. She learned that self-acceptance includes accepting seasons of scarcity, times when we have nothing material to offer, and trusting that we are still valuable, still connected, still enough. From that day forward, Lila came to the monastery every month, sometimes with offerings, sometimes without. She no longer felt shame when her bowl was empty. She understood that what mattered was showing up, being honest, allowing herself to be part of the community, even when she felt she had nothing to give. The monks always welcomed her, always received her empty bowl with the same reverence they showed the full ones. And Lila learned that being, not having, was the truest offering she could make. Over time, other villagers heard the story of Lila's empty bowl, and it changed the way they thought about offerings, about worth, about what it means to participate in community. Some came with less, some came with nothing, and all were received with love. The empty bowl became a symbol, a reminder that we are enough as we are, that presence is the gift, that we do not need to be full to be whole. Lila lived the rest of her years with a quiet dignity, knowing that she belonged not because of what she had, but because of who she was. Tonight, as you rest, know that you do not need to be full, abundant, impressive, or productive to be worthy of peace. You do not need to prove your value by what you offer or achieve. Simply being here, breathing, existing, is enough. You are the offering. Your presence in this world, in this moment, is the gift. Let yourself be empty if that is where you are. Let yourself be enough exactly as you are. Rest in the truth that you belong, not because of what you have, but because you are. Conclusion: you are already home. And so, we arrive here together at this quiet threshold between waking and sleep. Take a slow breath now, feeling your body exactly where it rests. Notice the weight of your head on the pillow, the rise and fall of your chest, the way your hands lie still and open. You have traveled far tonight, through stories of crooked paths and soft bells, through gardens and storage rooms, through tears and laughter, and the small sacred acts of being human. You have met travelers and monks, gardeners and calligraphers, each one a mirror reflecting something true about your own heart. Let those stories settle now, not as lessons to memorize, but as companions to carry with you. Let them remind you, whenever you forget, that you are not alone in your struggles, not strange in your doubts, not broken in your imperfections. Every being who has ever lived has walked this same terrain of self-judgment and self-acceptance, has struggled to believe in their own worth, has wondered if they are enough. You are part of an ancient lineage of people learning to be kind to themselves, learning to stop the war within, learning to come home to their own hearts. You are here now, and that is sufficient. You do not need to have achieved anything today to deserve this rest. You do not need to be further along on any path, more healed, more awakened, more anything. You are allowed to be exactly as you are in this moment, tired or restless, peaceful or troubled, however you are. This moment does not require you to be different. It only asks you to be present, to breathe, to let yourself be held by the simple fact of your own existence. You are enough because you are, not because of what you do or accomplish or prove. As you prepare to sleep, imagine laying down all the burdens you have carried today, the judgments you made against yourself, the comparisons that stole your peace, the pressure to be more or better or different. Set them down gently, one by one, as if you were placing stones beside a river and watching the current carry them away. You do not need to carry them into sleep. You do not need to carry them into tomorrow. You can rest now, unburdened, allowing your body and mind to soften into the deep restoration that sleep offers. This is your birthright, this rest, this peace. It is not something you earn, it is something you allow. The teachings we have explored tonight, impermanence and no self, compassion and presence, these are not distant philosophies. They are invitations to live differently, to meet yourself with tenderness, to stop waiting for permission to be kind to your own heart. Anika reminds you that nothing is fixed, that you are always changing, always becoming. You are not trapped in who you were yesterday. Anatta teaches you that there is no solid, unchanging self to defend or perfect. You are fluid, interconnected, free to let go of rigid ideas about who you should be. Metta invites you to offer yourself the same loving kindness you would offer a dear friend, to speak to yourself with gentleness, to be on your own side. If these words have touched something deep within you, return to this space whenever you need to remember. Subscribe to keep this quiet refuge accessible, a place you can come back to when the world feels harsh, and you need to be reminded of your own goodness. This is not just a video. This is a practice, a commitment to self-compassion, a choice to stop abandoning yourself and start coming home. You are welcome here always, in whatever state you arrive, with whatever you are carrying. There is no wrong way to need gentleness, no wrong time to seek peace. As you drift towards sleep now, imagine yourself as the cat who decided he belonged, as the gardener who learned that potential does not need to be realized to matter, as the woman with the empty bowl who discovered that presence is the offering. You are all of these. You are the crooked path and the soft bell, the unfinished calligraphy and the inside-out cloak. You are beautifully, imperfectly, completely human, and that is not something to fix. It is something to honor, to cherish, to finally accept with an open heart. You have been waiting so long for permission to love yourself. Let this be that permission. Let tonight be the beginning of a new gentleness. Sleep now, dear one. Let your breath carry you into deep rest, into dreams, into the quiet renewal that happens when we finally stop striving and simply allow ourselves to be. You have done enough today. You have been enough today. You are enough right now, in this very moment, exactly as you are. There is nothing you need to change or improve or accomplish before you are worthy of peace. You are already home. You have always been home. Rest here, in the sanctuary of your own being, and let sleep restore you. If this space has brought you comfort, consider subscribing so you can return whenever you need to remember these truths. Thank you for being here. Thank you for breathing with us. Good night.